All right. Today, we are going to be introducing project 4, our last project of the semester. And in the project 4, in the project 4 folder, you're going to see there is a HelloFresh nav bar. There's a HelloFresh ad and a project 4 web page template, which is 2560 pixels, and it's a Photoshop file. So let's talk about what I have this checklist here. You're going to choose one of your 2 recipes, and you're going to use all the copy that's provided. It's up to you which recipe you choose. It doesn't matter to me. You can choose either one. You're going to use the main completed dish image. So just like the previous project, you have to use the main completed dish image, the hero image. And you may optionally use any or all of the individual step images if you choose. Now, if you used the step-by-step images in your cookbook, printed cookbook, this is a companion to your printed cookbook. So you'll want to use all of those images. So whatever you chose to do in your printed cookbook, you're going to do here. So those of you who did use them, you want to use them here. If you didn't, you don't need to. You do not need to include the sidebar stock up section this time. We're not using the sidebar, but instead you must use the HelloFresh sidebar advertisement provided, because this is a website. There are web ads, and so the ad you have to include in your layout. You must also incorporate at least one interactive element. Now that can be a button, an image gallery. You tell me, what are some other items that we would expect to be in a website for recipes? Who can tell me? And let's list a few more just to make sure everyone understands what an interactive element is. You all look at web pages. Who are my cooks in the room that look at websites that have recipes on them? What kind of interactive elements might we include?
I would say like a checklist.
Maybe, but not maybe.
Maybe thinking
What
about the app.
else?
Sometimes
It's
there's
going to be an.
links. I'm sorry. I was
No,
gonna
no,
say
go ahead.
sometimes there's links to like where to buy pans or things like Amazon links or grocery store, like to Whole Foods or whatnot to get the rest of the ingredients.
Okay, so that's possible. A link to shopping. Okay, what else?
Advertisement. There's some like videos or picture about advertisements. I mean,
We're going to be doing an advertisement. I'm giving you an advertisement, but what you said earlier is video. A lot of recipes have a video telling you how to make it. So there might be a video link. What else?
Like a link to Pinterest or something to save it for later.
Absolutely, a link to Pinterest. Very good. What else? You all have a computer in front of you. Google recipes online. Look at a recipe online. What else?
Oh, ratings, no?
Yes, ratings. We rate recipes. We rate everything online. Absolutely. Review the recipe. Rate the recipe. Very good. What else? What else?
Review
I need to know you guys are
comments,
awake.
Jump to recipe. I don't know. I've seen those. I've seen that
Yes.
a couple times.
Jump to recipe. Print recipe. Right?
And also place for comments, like you give your comments and you give some annotations.
Yes, exactly. Comments, recommendations. So there's all kinds of things you can be doing. You can have an image gallery, a video, print, jump to recipe, links to share, social media, so many things. So those are all interactive elements. You must choose at least one, but I find most people find it's helpful to have more than one, because that's what when you start to do the research, you're going to see most recipes have quite a few interactive elements. So you're going to want to be researching, and for your research phase of this process, and taking screenshots of, so you can include them in your process book, of existing websites with recipes, so that we can see how the recipes look online, what interactive elements they might include, what are some of the layout techniques that are used. The website navigation needs to be mocked up at the top of the page. I'm providing it for you, so it's the HelloFresh navigation bar that needs to be included. So what we're going to be doing is thinking about all of the typographic education you've had up to this point, and make a detailed typographic refinements. We're taking an existing design. You've just completed your cookbook design. We are now taking that same design and reinterpreting it into a web page. So there has to be the same visual language. You're still going to use the same color palettes, same typefaces, same design elements are going to happen here on this web page. So again, we're in Photoshop. Again, we want to go ahead and look at our libraries. All of our images are going to pop up in the libraries. If we put them there, your color palettes are going to be in the libraries, your type styles, everything is going to be here in your libraries. So they're easy access. That's the beauty of creating Creative Cloud libraries. Everything that we're working on will show up here in the library when we move over to a different application like Photoshop. So that's awesome. So the file I gave you is going to open and look like this. Now I have some guidelines I've put in here. By no means do you have to keep these guidelines where they are. It's just showing you how we create guidelines. Remember, just like in Illustrator, Command R turns our rulers on and off. So you're going to want to turn on your rulers. That's how we get our ruler guides. They pull down from the rulers, just like that. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is bring in my navigation bar. I'm going to go to File, Place Embedded. And I'm going to go into the downloads I pulled down from that I just shared with you. And there's this navigation bar. I'm going to place it into my file, tuck it up against my mockup here, and scale it to fit the full width proportionately of my design. I want to make sure I'm going edge to edge before I let go of it, and make sure it's tucked up to the top. All right, so there's my navigation. I now have my navigation mocked up in my window. I've then taken I'm going to take this guideline and line it up with the line on the navigation, so I know that that's the top edge of my margin. So now I'm going to also design some margins that work with this navigation. So I have this navigation here. I want to line up my navigation with the logo HelloFresh, so I know that's one of my margins. You want to make alignments. I'm going to do on this side, look at and say, do I want to align, keep it just aligned equally? I think I will at this time. I think that makes sense. I don't need to line it up with the login button. Just going to keep it pretty even. Now I have this set up as 4 columns. You very well might not be using 4 columns. Just like we did when we were making our modules in InDesign, we're going to go ahead and take our shape tool, our rectangle tool. I'm going to go ahead and I have, let me open up my layers. I'm going to go to Window, Layers, and I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to call this my grid, and say okay. I'm going to create a square as a spacer. Now, I'm using a 4-column, I'm giving you a template that has a 4-column grid on it. You do not need to keep this 4 columns. I do want to show you that once you're going to be basing this on your grid that you're using. So if you were using for example, a 5-column grid, then you want to change this to a 5-column grid and divide the space accordingly, or a 6-column or 4-column, whatever your single page grid is, you want to match. So these are all movable. You can move these grid lines anywhere you want. Once you have your grid in place, I just have this here for ease of use. I've made my box. I'm going to pull down a grid, a flow line. I'm going to then take and make another rectangle based on this gutter size I've created. I'm just going to make this a bright color so I can see it. What is going on with my rectangle? Why isn't it filling my rectangle? All right. Oh, I didn't rasterize my shape. That's why. Hold on. I'm not going to worry about coloring it. Right now, I just want to get this grid on. So here are my two rectangles that I'm using just as spacers. And I'm going to go down my page and create my modular grid for my design. Okay. And once I have that, I can close these. I'm going to go in and add a grid layer. I think I just threw mine away on accident. And the reason one of the things I'm going to do is what can be helpful I find in a web design scenario is to make your grid be a solid shape and that we can change the opacity on. So I can make this. I can make another layer. I'm on my layers panel and I'm just making copies of this. I'm going to zoom out. I can then do the same thing. Once I have them all done, let's say they're all done, I can grab all of them and I can merge visible. So they're all, oops, no, I don't want to do that. I want to just merge selected, not visible, sorry. Merge. Not visible. Actually, maybe I'll just hold on. Let's make these invisible and just now I can merge visible. There, I'm merging visible, but I've turned off the nav bar, the Chrome in the background. And I'll turn those guys back on. So now these are all my horizontal rows. And now I'm going to do my columns. Same thing. I'm going to make it a different color. And it's a new layer. I'm going to hit multiply and make this a subtle color. And then I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to duplicate that layer, duplicate the layer, duplicate the layer. And now I have my grid. I'm going to bring these, I'm going to turn off everything else. Just have my vertical grid now and say merge visible. Okay, and so I can turn my grid on and off, but this will be handy as I'm building. I can build right over this, my design, and start kind of putting boxes in where I want to put things and start bringing in, because I'm working with my libraries, I can do things like bring my photo right in from my library and start scaling it to where I want it to fit in my grid. So you can start laying things in pretty quickly because you're reconfiguring. The thing you're thinking about now is this idea of taking, and I'm just showing you, oops, I'm just showing you, you're going to be filling out your grid on the full page. But remember, when we're designing, you want to think about this in sections of scrolling, because we're looking at a web page. So the reason having these grids horizontally are very important is because you're only going to be seeing, this much of a scroll at any given time. So you have to make sure that the top of the page is giving us enough information to draw us in to read the rest of the page. So when you're translating your design for a web page, you do have to think about, really importantly now, that active corner, which really is this upper left-hand corner of every one of these modules, and recognizing that when we're designing for web, we're thinking of this in sections horizontal. Like these 2 rows is one scroll. These 2 rows is another scroll, so that we're thinking about how people are scrolling through our page. And the last thing that you're going to be adding in and having to deal with, no longer a sidebar of the stock up, but your new sidebar is a ad, and this HelloFresh ad is required. And you then need to come in and scale it to fit within your layout. It does not have to stay this giant size. It comes in high resolution, so it comes in large. But you need to scale it to fit within your grid. So it can be 1 column, it can be 2 column, but recognize, how big you're going to want it. And I'm going to add this into my library, and then I'll deal with that later. Okay, so this is what we're going to be doing as we move forward. The number one first step is to be researching, right? Looking at existing web pages of recipes and cooking online, thinking about what our interactive element is going to be, and start thinking about how we're translating our cookbook printed design now into our website. So the first thing is to do that research and start laying in our grid. So that's all I need to do for Thursday, is start with the research on cookbooks online, cooking online with the interactive element, thinking about what our interactive elements are going to be, and then start laying in our grid here in Photoshop and bringing all of our elements in so we're ready to go. We will have some time to work in class on Thursday. And so that's part of our plan. All right.